Welcome back to Edutube. Science is simple. In today's video, we're going to cover about movement in and out of cells. Imagine spraying perfume or deodorant in the corner of a room. At first, only that corner smells. But after a short while, someone on the other side of the room can smell it too. The particles move randomly because of their own kinetic energy, and over time they spread out evenly through the space. Then we say the system has reached equilibrium. Everything is balanced. This process is called diffusion. They do this naturally, without needing any help or energy. So, diffusion is the net movement of particles from an area of high concentration to an area of low concentration down a concentration gradient. Let's take a closer look at how diffusion works in cells. Cell membranes are partially permeable. They let some molecules through, but not everything. Small, uncharged molecules like oxygen and carbon dioxide can pass straight through the membrane. For example, when a cell respires, it makes carbon dioxide. So, the inside of the cell has more carbon dioxide than the outside. This difference in concentration is called concentration gradient. Since carbon dioxide can pass through the cell membrane, more carbon dioxide molecules moves out of the cell, from high to low concentration. The same thing happens with oxygen, but in reverse. Cells use up oxygen for respiration. That means there is less oxygen inside the cell. So, oxygen moves into the cell from the capillary, where the concentration is higher. Diffusion doesn't need any energy to happen. It's a passive process. But how fast diffusion happens can change depending on a few important factors. Let's look at what affects the rate of diffusion. The first factor is concentration gradient. This means the difference in concentration between two areas. The particles will spread out faster when the concentration gradient is steeper. If the gradient is larger, diffusion happens faster. The second factor is diffusion distance. The shorter the distance particles have to travel, the faster diffusion happens. Particles don't have to go far through flat cells like alveolar wall, and diffusion is quicker. The third factor is surface area to volume ratio. The more surface area something has compared to its volume, the faster diffusion can happen. If a cell has more surface area, more particles can pass in or out across the cell membrane at the same time, speeding up diffusion. The fourth factor is temperature. Higher temperatures give particles more energy. This makes them move faster, so they diffuse more quickly. You can think of how sugar dissolves faster in hot tea than in cold tea. That's because of faster particle movement. Now let's talk about osmosis. Osmosis is just a special kind of diffusion. Osmosis is the net movement of water molecules across a partially permeable membrane from an area of high water potential to an area of low water potential. In other words, water moves from where there are more free water molecules to where there are fewer. It's not related to the total volume of water, but the proportion of water compared to solutes. A dilute solution like pure or watery solutions has less solutes and lots of free water molecules. So, dilute solutions have high water potential. A concentrated solution with lots of solute has fewer free water molecules. This is because the solute particles attract water molecules, and they have low water potential. Water moves from solution with more free water to solution with less free water. So we can say water goes from high to low water potential. A cell has water inside and is surrounded by water outside. These two areas are separated by cell membrane. Water can use special channels to move in and out across the cell membrane by osmosis. When an animal cell is surrounded by a dilute solution, water enters the cell and it becomes bigger. It swells up, and unless the extra water is removed in some way, the cell will burst. If the cells are surrounded by a concentrated solution, water will move out of the cell by osmosis, and the cell will shrink. Too much water in or out is bad for animal cells. That's why animal cells need to stay in isotonic solution that is same concentration as the liquid inside the cells. Plant cells are a bit different because they have a cell wall outside their membrane. Even if water moves into the plant cell, the vacuole fills up. It pushes the cytoplasm out against the cell wall. The size doesn't change. The cell becomes firm and strong. This turgor pressure helps keep stems and leaves upright. If water moves out of the cell becomes soft and floppy. The plant will wilt because there's not enough water pressure inside. This can pull the cell membrane away from the cell wall, and the cell is said to be plasmolysed. Cell membranes are partially permeable, and they let small molecules like water pass through easily. But what about larger or important molecules like glucose, salts, or minerals? That's where active transport comes in. Active transport is when a cell moves particles from an area of low concentration to an area of high concentration against the concentration gradient. This is the opposite of diffusion or osmosis, which go from high to low. Since this goes against the natural direction, it needs energy, kind of like pushing something uphill. So, how does it work? The cell membrane is more complex than you think. There are carrier proteins on the cell membrane. These proteins can pick up the molecules the cell needs and push them across the membrane, even if the concentration is higher on the other side. This process requires energy from respiration. The energy is stored in special molecules called ATP, like tiny energy packets. Imagine your intestine cells need to take in glucose. But what if there's already more glucose inside the cell than in the intestine? Diffusion won't work when the cell needs to absorb all nutrients from the intestine. So the cell uses active transport to pull in even more glucose from outside. Plant roots have root hair cells with long, thin extensions and a large surface area to absorb water and minerals. The soil often has less minerals than the root cells. So the plant uses active transport to absorb minerals, like magnesium to make chlorophyll, and nitrates to make proteins. These cells also have lots of mitochondria to provide the energy needed for this process. As a quick recap, diffusion is the net movement of particles from an area of high concentration to an area of low concentration, without using energy. Osmosis is the diffusion of water across a partially permeable membrane from an area of higher water potential to an area of lower water potential. Active transport is the movement of particles from a region of low concentration to a region of high concentration using energy from respiration. If this video helped you understand better, make sure to like, subscribe, and hit that bell icon so you never miss a bite-sized science lesson from Edutube. Until next time, keep learning, stay curious, and remember, science is simple.